I'm Marcy Barron, and this is Mondays with Marcy. I'm your homeward bound guide to everything 5D living. I can't wait to share with you tips and tools to guide your personal transformation so that you can live a life that thrills you. Welcome to this week's Mondays with Marcy. I am Marcy Barron, your host, and welcome to this week's podcast, where my guest is Holly Boxenhorn. And Holly and I were introduced by a client of hers and a woman that is a friend of mine. And I have just from the very beginning been blown away by you, Holly. Who you are and what you do in this world and your purpose is just so needed. So why don't you introduce yourself and, how did you get here? Like, tell us a little bit about your journey, who you serve, and we'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, the feeling is mutual. It was a number of years ago that we connected, and it was instantaneous. And thankfully, we've been able to maintain that. I think we're on the same page for sure. Even though we might deliver it differently, we are on the same page. So the feeling is mutual. So a little bit about myself. I am a midlife transition coach. So I work with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are ready to get excited and energized about the second half of their life and navigate midlife on their own terms, for sure. So a little bit about myself prior to this was I was a therapist. I was a practicing psychotherapist for over a decade, and I loved what I did. And then I had my first child. And I was ready to go back to work, and I had a forced hiatus placed on me in the sense that the nanny who was going to be caring for my child, my son, my firstborn, was stealing from me.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So it was odd. It was like, I wasn't like obvious. Like we lived in Long Beach, so I would go out for a run. And like, she would just like take like $10 from me every here and there. So I was like suddenly noticing like my wallet, I thought I had $80 and then suddenly I had 70. So I went for a run just to test it out. I was scheduled to start my first day. I'll never forget this. And I came back and in fact, it was accurate. She was stealing from me. And so of course I cannot leave my son with a stealing nanny. So we had to scramble a bit, my husband and I. And so what I did was I stayed with my private clients that I had at the time. And my husband would come home and then take care of my son. And then I would head off and do that. But I didn't take any new clients on. And then eventually everyone kind of, ended the working relationship with me. We finished our work together. And then I truly just became a full-time parent, Marcy. I just had the luxury of being able to do that. And I have no regrets. It was a phenomenal experience. But then I started getting the itch to go back. My second child, I think, was like 7 or 8 at the time. And I really wanted to start going back. And my husband, believe it or not, asked me, or actually suggested to me, did you ever think about a coaching thing? And I was like, coaching? Are you crazy? I'm a therapist. What are you talking about? And this is going back over a decade ago.
I was going to say, you were one of the first coaches I've ever heard be a coach in this very saturated world.
Exactly. So we're talking, because I've been coaching, I got my actual certification in 2011.
Yeah.
But, I was in the certification program before that. So, but it was funny because I didn't buy it. Like, in fact, the program that I went to, I don't know if you're aware of it, it's called the IPEC.
Yes.
So it's one of the premier, certification programs. It's very comprehensive, but it was very expensive and it was a big time commitment. And they offered an incentive to, if you join the whole thing, you'd get X amount of money off. I was so hesitant that I couldn't. I just joined the one class knowing I'd have to pay more money for it.
Yeah.
Well, after that first weekend module, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was hook, line, and sinker in. And I never turned back since because, honestly, though I'm a huge advocate of anything that promotes greater self-awareness and well-being, I have just found for me that coaching is a more effective approach to helping those people who are ready to create change. Different than therapy, coaching doesn't attempt to label someone and have them work well within the context of that label. Because, you have to diagnose your
Right.
client, your patient,
Right.
depression, anxiety, ADHD, PTSD, whatever it might be. So coaching actually it's different. It's rather a discovery-based process of human potential, where it takes your clients to their greatest level of performance and life satisfaction. So for me, it was such a more powerful way to
Oh,
work with people.
it's so
So yeah,
exciting, like the way you
yeah,
phrase it. And I do feel, and this is, we both go in some way, your energy perspective and my energy perspective are similar and a little different, but it's like
yeah,
when you're just constantly going around and around and around in the mind through the label of a diagnosis, it's this was true for my own experience. I was in talk therapy for years.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just went around and around. It was like, okay, someone was listening to me, but I didn't feel empowered to make any change, And it's like you
yeah,
said, it's like it comes from this like juicy, exciting place where
yeah.
it's so empowering and so incredible. So now you're doing this and you're coming into this emanation of yourself. Now, how and why did you want to support midlife women?
Uh,
Like, how did that
well,
happen? Because this is an
I,
incredibly underserved
yeah, oh yeah.
community.
I think, well, listen, my niche was always women. And going back since I started doing this 10 years ago, I think it's 11 now. Actually, March was my 11th year, I think. Um, I, I'm 53 myself. So I was always working with women, maybe in their, who were older, in their late 30s and 40s. But then I started really gravitating more to midlife women. It just is what kind of developed. And I love that my personal life kind of, mirrors my professional life, because I really get it on
Right.
a very huge level.
Yeah.
Um, and, so how really midlife really, I mean, I guess why I decided to really specialize in it, because let's face it, there really is a reason why midlife gets a bad rep. I mean, it is a period of time where we are bombarded with a lot of change back to back, whether it be empty nesting, aging parents, our careers are changing up, where it might be renegotiating or reestablishing old and new relationships, all while our bodies are changing big time. And
Mm.
on top of that, Marcy, we've spent decades, I'm going to say decades, yeah, crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's, thinking by now we'd have all the answers. When in fact, in midlife, it's more common to have more questions than ever.
Mm.
So, the struggle is very real. We're following this so-called perceived roadmap. And then suddenly it feels like it's taken like this drastic detour. And we're
Mm.
kind of like, yikes, now what? Let's face it, no one prepares us to live in the trenches of, parenthood, elder care, loss, sickness, and menopause all at once,
Yeah.
but here's the thing that I've come to learn professionally and personally, that it's actually in midlife where we're in the most powerful position than ever to create the change that we want, to actually create true transformation. Not just because we're so much wiser and care so much less what others think, which that's helpful, don't get me wrong. But with wisdom comes discernment. We're so over being less than.
Mm.
We're just done with our own bullshit, because we've bought into it for so long, and we're realizing this is not serving me. I'm not getting anywhere with it. And also, we have this fire under our ass because we realize, well, boy, if not now, when?
Right.
I've been saying that, when my child leaves home, or when I get this promotion, or when I get my health in order, then I'm going to feel better, or then I'm going to have it together. And that's not the case. It doesn't work that way. So we have this impetus in us because we know, wow, I got to bust some moves. This is not, my time is limited here. And we know so much more about ourselves. We've learned so many life lessons that we can actually start honestly pulling back the layers and really start putting in practices and strategies that accurately support what it is that we want in and for our lives. So
Mm.
that's why I think midlife is actually one of the best positions that we're ever in to create it. I know it for a fact.
Right,
I think
right.
it is.
I
It's
get
true.
chills as you're speaking because it is just so true. Somewhere in our society, the wisdom of the elder feminine, right? It's the
Yeah.
maiden, the mother, and the crone energy of this maternal embodiment of wisdom
Yeah.
has become lost or, less than. And when you speak, I'm like, yes. And what I love, and this is where you and I agree, it's like we're co creating our reality. We have a choice in how we want it to be. And yes, there are certain things that are a little bit more challenging, with our physical things. And, even me personally, like, it's like, oh my God, I just went through menopause this past year.
Mm.
um and it's like, wow, I feel it. It's like it's an
Oh yeah.
interesting, yeah,
Oh
it's an
yeah. And the
interesting change.
changes are every year. Like, we don't have the luxury like we did in the past to rely on our youth to push us through, a
Right.
poor night's sleep or, anything that maybe not is like the best at like even eating poorly. We just don't have that luxury. The other luxury we don't have is what worked for us in the past is changing big time every year.
Mm.
So, we set up a plan in place for ourselves, let's say that's going to promote, our health. But all of a sudden it starts to shift and change even in a year's time because our bodies are changing all the time. So
Mm.
we really have to be on our toes physically more than ever to be able to assess, is this working for me, isn't it? Just because it was in the past, I might have to pivot and move here.
I
So
love
that's the
that you
big
give
piece.
that support for the women you serve. I mean, what an incredible thing to be able to have is you as the guiding support and the wisdom of, like you said, professionally and personally to help be that
Oh,
light.
I'm in the throes of it all. Like I said, whether it might be the physical changes, I've passed menopause, but I have physical limitations from, I was a very, I guess, I don't want to call myself I was an athlete in a sorts that I used to be a runner, and I
Mm.
definitely expedited the process of aching bones. I had hip replacements, so I have
Wow.
physical limitations and they continue, but I love being active. So, learning to modify and go with my body as, it's aging, I had to learn. But on top of that, just things that I never expected. My mother recently has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which is really through and still does us for a loop, my sisters and I. And while I'm still really honestly in big stages of my kids, even though they're both in college, they're still very, they're not, they're semi-independent children.
Right.
They're in the home, they're out of them, we're still caring for them. And then there's my career, my own life that I'm trying to, get off the ground. So,
And as a
it's,
wife too, your husband's in the mix
right.
too.
Right. And I have my
Yeah.
great, and I have two fabulous dogs. But I mean,
Right.
all of that is wonderful, but it's a lot to balance and
Right.
a lot is changing all at once. And what I thought for sure was steadfast goals and objectives are suddenly like, oh, now I have to be a little bit more flexible with this
Right. And
because,
isn't that what everybody's learning, right?
yeah,
Be in
exactly,
the
for sure.
present moment with what's happening and with the onlay of what's happened in the world in the past two
Oh,
years.
yeah,
Everything's
yes.
so accelerated. There's like,
I
e-
think it was the, a real reality, bust on all of us. Like it was the biggest, I think COVID was like the biggest na on
yeah,
everyone. Like, hey,
yeah,
everyone, you're not so in control of what you, as much as you think,
totally.
and that has always been the case. But we buy into the belief that we can control certain things that we really can't, only our own process.
Right. And
So,
that's been the
yeah,
split. that's the two world split. It's like either people are seeing they co-create their reality, it's their inner world that reflects their outer world,
100%.
or the other group, which is victim mentality and
Wow.
that victim persecutor
That's right. Yeah.
mentality. So again, you're the lens in which you're empowering women in a time whereas you can either look at this as a blessing or a curse, and your role is to support in finding and mining and realizing the blessings of this, and there are
Yeah.
so many.
Well, you're actually hitting it right on the head. I mean, my coaching program, I'd say it's like a three-step process. And one of the steps you're referring to where it's the mindset. It's getting our attitude in check, because the truth is, there is a ton of research out there that is proving every day that people are living longer, fuller lives than ever, which are shattering the outdated myths that have been existing about aging and all that it comes with. And there are a ton of women out there who are just killing it in their midlife, more than like they're just knocking it out of the park. So, that whole, I mean, I have been victim to it where like, I'll be like, yeah, well, I'm an old lady or I'm, enough of that. That's bullshit.
Right.
Like we are in a very powerful position, more so than ever before. Listen, I've worked with younger people, and I still have a couple because I do have, parent women who might have asked me to take on their daughters or whatever. I don't really do that much, but there is a certain amount of living that has to be had
Right.
in order to really create the impetus for change. It's just a fact. It's life lessons. It's
Mhm.
knowing yourself. It's finally getting over, and buying into the fact that this is an internal job. This is not about securing a better job, a better marriage, a better, health situation. Yes, those things are important, but what's paramount is securing our energy. Energy is the one thing that changes everything. Life is challenging. So if we understand our energy, when I say energy, you know what I mean by
Yes.
how we're showing up in the world, how
Yeah.
we're showing up, right? So by understanding our energy and then knowing how to handle it, that's how we can create optimal outcomes and then navigate all these midlife transitions,
And what
because
I
life is
yeah.
going to throw us curveballs.
Right.
It's just
And what
going
I
to.
say is the energy is the key to open the door. It's the
100%.
first place where you can access, and then it ripples into the mind and the body and the
It's
emotions.
everything.
Yeah.
It's and that's a large part of my coaching program. What, not only mindset, but is what I refer to the first and paramount process is what I refer to as creating an empowered, energetic state. And some people are like, oh, what does that mean? That sounds kind of woo woo. It doesn't. It's not that at all. It's honestly understanding again how you're showing up in this world, what's holding you back, and then understanding there's a way to handle your energy. And I educate people on the 6 core influencers that actually impact their energy. One of which is physical. We were just talking about it, our physical influencer. Often another one is spiritual influencer. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean necessarily religious. I mean our greater purpose, what drives us, what makes us tick. And in midlife, that is shifting up big time.
Right.
Big time. So when that's detracting from our energy, it's really hard to navigate these transitions and move through life, well, successfully, happily, however you want to refer to it as. So for me, it's, even though every client who comes to me, Marcy, might have a specific agenda, whether it's in their careers or their relationships or their health, or maybe it's a couple of things. And I always keep that front and center because, of course, I want to address what they want in their lives. But it's the part that really they needs to be understood is the energy. This way, when they leave with me, they take that with them always, and they can apply it to the next transition and the next transition and the next transition. So that's always kept in the forefront. We're always working on their objectives, but we have to understand the foundation and understand how we can leverage our energy, how we can, even when it feels almost impossible to show up.
Right.
Because you could be right, you could be crazy smart, you could be crazy rich, organized, gorgeous, fit, however you want to put it, but it doesn't matter, because sometimes the ability to show up and be engaged in life can be severely limited and sometimes not possible, because life is just really challenging, and
Right.
it throws us curveballs.
And what
Yeah,
I feel too is like, even though, let's say, the lens in which they're showing up is their relationship, and that's what they want to work on,
right.
I know you know that all of that shows up in every single
That's
area.
right. That's
It's
right. That's
right.
right.
How they do one thing is it's going to
How
show
you
up.
do
It's
everything.
how
Yeah,
they do
exactly. Yeah.
everything. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know you.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see that too.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest, like top three things that midlife women need to know? Like, what are your three amazing takeaways for the women listening today?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think women are under the misconception that by now they should know better. They should have all the answers. They should be in a better place. And that's really not the case, because in midlife, so much has changed about ourselves. So it's really completely normal to have more questions than ever.
Hmm.
So rather than beat ourselves up like I have all these questions, like honor them, embrace them. That is a fabulous thing that you're questioning it and you're pondering it. I know it's uncomfortable. It's not comfortable to be in a place of uncertainty, but that's a sign of, you're ready to grow and expand. So that's one thing I would say for sure, is that I think it's a myth that we're
Right.
supposed to have all the answers, when in actuality, it's a good sign when you don't. That means
Mm.
you're ready to change and move into a bigger version of yourself, right?
Mm. I
So
love
I would
that.
say that's one thing. The other I would also say is, we referred to it a little bit before, is like I said, it's radically reframing aging. I think that
Yeah.
it's so important that um, we surround ourselves with images and education that show empowering images of women who are aging. And there is a lot out there. And
Yeah.
there's also, as I said to you, a ton of research out there that's supporting people, living longer, fuller lives than ever. And there's a lot of tools and practices that can promote it. So the
Yes.
more we can surround ourselves with that stuff, the better off we are. So I would say, it's time to radically reframe aging, shatter those outdated myths we have about that old lady, and aging, gracefully. Excuse my language, if it's
Yes.
okay. Fuck aging gracefully. Let's
Yeah.
age powerfully. Let's age powerfully. Okay.
Ooh.
So, I mean, grace is nice, but let's age powerfully.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there was an image I think that went around, like the Golden Girls were the same
Oh
age as
yeah.
the women on like the Sex and the City
Is
sequel.
that right? Oh,
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the women were in their 50s, Blanche, like Betty White, and all of them with their white
Right.
gray hair. And again, it's a totally different thing. And my take is
Totally.
if you fill your body with the light, with its breath, meditation,
Yeah.
vibrant, healthy food, and move and sunlight, like you are then like literally changing your light body. And as you said, the
Yeah.
light body and energetic body, how you show up, it then ripples down into every cell of your body.
100. It really is. It actually speaks to the third element of my coaching program, where I love to weave in research based practices that, are known, I mean, the research is documented, that create, optimal outcomes. So, step number one is creating an empowered energetic state, understanding and knowing your energy and knowing how to handle it. Two is like getting rid of that, that mindset junk that's holding us back. And then the third, I just love weaving in research-based strategies, like you're just talking about: meditation, movement, nutrition. Just there are proven practices that will support us
Right.
to be able to ascend, ultimately create what we want.
And what a beautiful thing for the people, the women you serve, to have that information and then have you supporting them in doing it. You know what I
It's my
mean?
pleasure. I honestly, I, listen, I work hard, but it is such inspiration to be around other women who want more for themselves. They keep
Yeah.
me honest. They keep me real. I can't ask other people to, push themselves out of their comfort zone when I'm not doing the same and growing and expanding.
Same thing. I say the
Yep.
same thing all the time. I'm about to lead a retreat next week, and it's the same thing. It's like I go first, right?
Yeah.
Embody what it is that I'm holding space for the transformation, whether it's individually or, the 15 women that are, going to
That's
be
right.
away with me for 4 days. So I hear you, and it is a beautiful honor to walk this path with
Oh,
you, and
it is.
knowing that what you're doing here is truly a gift. How can our audience connect with you? What's the best way?
Your best way is probably my website. You'll get all my information.
Okay.
HollyBoxenhorn.com. So real simple, my name. I also just created a quiz for women over 40 to find their midlife advantage.
Ooh.
So enough is enough. Let's shine the light on our strengths and, shift that energy towards looking at, what is going well in our lives and take it with us into midlife. So I just created a fun quiz. It literally takes under a minute to do, and you'll
Oh.
get your results right away. So I'll definitely give that to you. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, so wait, is
Yeah,
it like I'm gonna link the quiz in the I mean, I'm sorry, your website in the show notes. Can they
yep.
get to the quiz for your website?
They can, but I can also give you a direct link to the
Okay.
quiz.
You'll give me
They can do
both.
both. It's
And
on
I
my website, and as well, I'll give you both. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we'll get those links, and I know you also write an awesome newsletter,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
people can get your wisdom in their inbox. I just want to thank you, Holly, for being a guest here so
Thank you.
much. I'm so grateful. If anybody listening knows that this is medicine for someone they know's soul, we ask that they forward it to a woman in midlife. We know that this message really needs to reach the masses so that women come into their power. Thank you so much, Holly. See you next time.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. That's it for this week's episode of Mondays with Marcy. Be sure to subscribe to my newsletter at marcybaronclears.com. I also would love for you to follow me on your favorite podcasting app so that you don't miss a single episode. I'm Marcy Baron, and thanks for listening. I am so grateful you are here.